guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing the top 10 books that I want to read in 2021 or 2022 from my shelves. So these are books that I already own. They're already on my shelves. There's a lot of books that I want to read in 2022 that I actually do not own yet, or I don't own yet because like they're coming out in 2022 or whatever. But these are just the books that are already on my shelf that I really want to get to this year, and it's the top 10. So if I sound a little weird, I am recovering from you know what right now. Last year I did the same video and I actually only read 4 of the books on my top 10 list I want to read in 2021, which I can't believe because I was like, oh, I'm gonna do so good this year, like I'm gonna read all these books. Like I always feel like I'm gonna read these books and then I just never do that good with them for some reason. I don't know why. But this year I actually do feel like I'm gonna do pretty good. I feel like all of these books are books that I really want to read, and I feel like I'm actually gonna read more this year than I did last year and the year before. So, alright, so the first book that I put on this list was Unkindness of Magicians. This is by Kat Howard, and I have been interested in this book for a very, very long time because I've heard nothing but good things about this book. And I've always wanted to own this book and read this book, and I finally picked it up kind of at the end of last year, and I am so excited to finally get around to reading this. I have a feeling I'm probably gonna get to this soon. At least I feel like I'm going to. But can we talk about this cover? It's literally such a cool looking cover. I love it so much, and I'm so excited to read it because I love magicians. I love reading about magicians. Like, magicians are just so cool to me. Like, even in real life, like just those people that are magicians, like David Blaine and stuff, that just do really, really crazy things that like mess with your mind. I love that. So this is apparently about like 2 magicians that are trying to remain like secret in New York. They don't want anybody to know about them or whatever, but they're trying to like fight for power, I believe. But I think it sounds so good and I'm so excited to read it. If you guys have read this book, let me know if you guys liked it because I think it sounds so good. And I'm really excited to read more books with magicians in them because I just think it sounds fun. So the next book that I'm dying to read, and I've actually been wanting to read this book for a really long time, it's just one of those books that I just haven't picked up, but I've been wanting to read it. So this is Blade of Secrets by Trisha Levenseller, and the thing about Trisha Levenseller that I love is her fantasies are very like fast-paced. They're a little bit on the shorter side, and they're usually standalones. I don't actually know if this is a standalone. I think she may be coming out with a second one, but I'm not 100% sure. But that's what I really love about her books is they're fantasy, but they're not like insane world building type of fantasies. Like, they're quick and they're to the point, and that's what I really love about her fantasy books. So this is actually about a girl who has really bad social anxiety, and she makes weapons, I guess. She's like a blacksmith, and she ends up creating like this really, really powerful blade, and somebody gets their hands on this blade that shouldn't have this blade, and so she, I think, is trying to get it back or trying to stop this person or something like that. So I think this sounds really interesting. I think it's going to be really cool to see how she shows social anxiety in this book and how she like portrays it and stuff like that. I think it's going to be really interesting, especially in like a fantasy world. I feel like social anxiety isn't something that you see very often in fantasy worlds. So I think that's going to be really, really interesting in how it's portrayed and stuff like that. So the next book I want to read is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. As you guys know, I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I loved Evelyn Hugo, one of my favorite books of all time, and I was so excited for this book to come out last year, but I never got around to reading it, which is crazy because I think this was like one of the top books I wanted to read last year. It was in some video for like my most anticipated reads or something like that. Taylor Jenkins Reid loves to write about famous people. It's kind of, I feel like, her brand at this point. But this is about like a group of kids that are famous. I think they have like famous parents or something like that. And this is one of your basic stories about like just drama and secrets and stuff like that. And I guess they have like a party, and then this party all of a sudden gets like super out of hand, a big fire starts, and like all these secrets and all this drama starts coming out about this family and these kids or these people. So I think it's just one of those like celebrity drama type of books, which I trust that Taylor Jenkins Reid did a good job with this because she is such a good writer. She is so good at writing characters. I love her character development and stuff like that. So I feel like no matter what she writes, she just is a talented writer. So she just knows how to write pretty much anything, and she knows how to make it good. So I'm really excited about this. I've heard really good things about it. Okay, so the next book that I want to read is The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut. And I read Kurt Vonnegut this year, my first story by him, and it was a short story called Harrison Bergeron. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of that, but it's only like, I don't know, like 3 pages or something like that. It's really quick, but it's kind of like, so it was basically a story about equality and trying to make everybody equal and have equal outcome by making everybody equal to the lowest common denominator. So it brought everybody down. So if you were like a talented ballerina, then you had to wear like sandbags all over your body while you danced, because everybody was brought down to the lowest common denominator and what that meant for the world and what the world looked like in a world like that. And I thought it was really, really an interesting story. Definitely recommend it. It was only like 3 pages. And so it got me really interested in Kurt Vonnegut because I liked the topic that he decided to cover in like a really unique, interesting way. And I feel like this one is one of those very like existential, thought-provoking reads that make you go like, huh, and makes you think like long after you read it, which I love books like that make you think like long after you read them. And I feel like this book touches on a lot of like existential ideas and all of that kind of thing, which I really, really like. It's about some guy who like goes on like some space adventure, and it's kind of weird, but like lots of existential questions come up that he has to kind of like come to terms with. It's that type of story, I think. If anybody has read this, let me know if you liked it, but I feel like it's totally gonna be like my kind of story. Like I love that type of theme. Okay, so this next book was actually on my list last year, my top 10 books I want to read in 2021, but I never got around to it, but I still really want to read this book. My cousin actually read this and was like, you need to read it, it's so good. And I just haven't, for whatever reason. It just hasn't been a book that I've picked up, but it's My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. As you guys know, last year I read Lolita, or not Lolita, Being Lolita is what it was, and it was a similar concept. It was the grooming concept, and it was really good. It was really interesting. I really loved how it was written, and this is kind of about a similar subject matter, and so I really want to read it and kind of compare it to Being Lolita. And I don't know, it sounds really good, it sounds really interesting, and I've heard nothing but amazing things about this book. I've heard it's really sad, it's very hard-hitting, and I really want to start reading more hard-hitting books, because I tend to feel like when I do read hard-hitting books, even though it's harder for me to pick them up, I usually end up loving them. And I feel like this one is definitely going to be like a 5-star read for me. So I'm really excited for this one. I was excited for it last year too, but I just never got around to picking it up for whatever reason. So this year, I really want to pick it up, and I really plan to pick it up, hopefully. So the next book I want to read is another standalone fantasy, and this is a book that I've been wanting to read forever. Again, I just haven't picked it up for whatever reason, but it is House of Salt and Sorrows by Aaron A. Craig, and I've heard so many good things about this novel. I've heard it's so good, and it's a standalone, it's YA, but like I said, I love a good standalone fantasy. Like, they just make me very happy. I don't have to commit to like a 5-book series or anything like that, and I've heard that this is so good. I've heard it's a little bit on the darker side, which I like in my fantasies. So apparently this is about like a bunch of sisters, and each one of them loses their life, and each time one dies, the death is more tragic every single time. And one of the daughters is trying to figure out why this is happening and how this is happening and what is going on. I think that this is it's based off of another story. I'm not exactly sure what story, but I know that this is like a retelling of some sort. But it sounds really, really interesting, and like I said, I've heard really great things. I do think that this has a romance in it. I feel like most YA fantasies have at least a little romance in it, and I think that this does. So that's gonna be kind of fun and interesting to read. I'm hopeful, and I really do think I'm gonna get to this year. I'm thinking about maybe reading this in like October around Halloween time, because it does have a little bit of a darker vibe to it. So I think it's gonna be really good, and I cannot wait to read this. All right, so this next book is called The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, and I saw this actually on Goodreads, and I thought the cover looked really cool. I was like, ooh, it's a fantasy. But this is actually not a fantasy. It looks like a fantasy because there's a castle on it, but this is actually about a amusement park, like similar to like Disneyland, and the owner's son is like super obviously wealthy or whatever. And I think it's kind of like a romance between like a girl and this guy who is like the heir of like Disneyland, like this fake Disneyland. Apparently, this is really, really good. Like, I've heard it's super, super good. It is a new adult romance, so it is probably on the steamier side from what I've heard. It definitely has quite a bit of like, you know, smut in it, so I don't know, but I think it's really an interesting idea because I'm a Disneyland girl through and through, and so I feel like I'm really gonna like this, and I feel like this is just a very unique idea, so I'm excited for this one, and when I'm in the mood for some steam, then I'm going to definitely pick this one up. Alright, so next up is Starfish by Akemi Dawn Bowman, and this is a book that has been raved about for a very long time. I feel like everybody who reads this raves about it. I know it's Books with Chloe's one of her favorite books of all time. The William C. Morris Debut Award finalist. So this is about a girl who is really wanting to leave like her abusive household, I guess. She's half Japanese and she just hasn't really connected with her culture or anything like that. And her goal is to get into this school called Prism, and she just wants to get into that school and leave her home and just start her life. But she ends up not getting into her dream school, and she just doesn't know what to do from there. She feels defeated. Things start to get worse at her house, and it's just not a good situation. So her friends asks her if she wants to kind of travel around the US and visit some different art schools. And in that process, she just learns a lot about herself. It's a very like coming of age, self-reflective type of book where this character, you know, grows and learns about herself, stuff like that. So I'm really excited about that. I do love a good coming of age novel on occasion. I don't like to read them too much, but I feel like everybody has had those coming of age moments where they grow a lot as a person, and I, for some reason, really like reading about those. And I feel like when I do read YA, I do tend to really like coming of age because I feel like we all know that experience to a certain degree. I love art. I'm an artist as well, and so I can kind of relate to like the art aspect of this too. So I'm excited for this one. I think it's going to be really good, and I think it's going to be kind of like a quick, kind of fun read. And I do feel like I'm going to really like this. Like you know when you just feel like something might be a 5-star? Like I feel like this one might be a 5-star. Alright, so this one was also on my top 10 books I want to read in 2021 video, and I never got to it, but I do want to read this one. I think the reason why I didn't read this one is not because I didn't want to read this one. I think I genuinely actually forgot about this book, and I think I would have read it in 2021 if I would have actually like thought about it, because I really do want to read this book. I just forgot about it, I think. So this is Roses and Rot by Kat Howard. And Hardback Hoarder, Allie from Hardback Hoarder, she said that this was really, really good. And she said she read it and she was so caught off guard. So what this is about two girls, they're two sisters, and they kind of have like an abusive mother. And it talks about how Imogen, one of the main characters, used to lay in bed and she would just wish that her mother would die because it would just make her life so much easier, and she just felt so guilty about that. Well, she's a writer or an artist or something, and then her sister is a dancer, and they both get accepted into the same school, and it ends up pitting them against each other at this school. But there's fae in here apparently, and I just think it sounds really, really good. I'm so excited to read this, and I don't know why, like I said, I didn't read it last year. I think I definitely would have. I just forgot about it, genuinely, because I really want to read this. It's a standalone fantasy, which, like I said, I love. So I really wanted to put a thriller on this list because I didn't have any thrillers on this list. And this is a book that I've had on my shelf for a long time, and I've wanted to pick it up, but something has been keeping me from picking it up, and I think it might be the length or something. I'm not really sure what is keeping me from picking this up. It's just like one of those books where you keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, even though you want to read it. And it's The Night Swim by Megan Golden. And I have heard such good things about this. Like everybody that reads this, I feel like it's always on like their favorites list or like their best books list and things like that. And it's, I think, about a girl, there's like a bunch of murders happening or something, or her sister gets murdered or something, and she's trying to like figure it out. I think there's like podcasts in here or something. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that's kind of the synopsis. But the reason I want to read this, and the reason I'm excited to read this, is because I've heard such good things about it. Like everyone always raves about it, and I love a good thriller that just is really exciting and interesting, and I'm excited to read this for that reason. I love reading thrillers, just like palate cleanser books, because there's not a lot of world building in thrillers, and they're usually really fast paced. So when I've read like a lot of fantasies and stuff like that, I feel like thrillers, like I said, are good palate cleansers, along with like contemporary romances. Those are good palate cleansers as well. So I'm really excited for this one. I think it's going to be really good. I don't know if I'm going to get to this like right away in 2022, but I think I will get to it eventually in 2022. So I really want to read this. It's one of those books that you know is going to be good, but you can't for some reason pick it up. There's something holding you back, you know what I mean? Or like, you feel like, does that sound good? Does that book sound good? Everybody says it's good, but like the synopsis doesn't sound that interesting. It's that type of book. It's kind of like Evelyn Hugo. Like you explain Evelyn Hugo to somebody and it sounds like the dumbest book ever, but you're like, but I swear it's good. That's kind of how I feel like this book is. Like the synopsis doesn't sound that special, but it's good, you know? So we'll see. So that is it for this video. The top 10 books on my shelf that I want to read eventually in 2022. Let me know if I should pick any of these books up first, like like which ones I should try to get to first. If you love any of these books and you think I should read them like right away, I'd be very, very curious. And I want to know in the comments below what your like top 5 books you want to read in 2022 are, or books that like you really want to get to eventually, or maybe a book that you've been putting off for a long time that you really just want to pick up finally this year. Let me know in the comments. I'd be very curious to kind of hear what your guys' books are. So anyways guys, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.